When LeBron James tapped his phone and hit post, the WNBA didn't just shake, it cracked. 3 words. 1 emoji. Caitlin Clark's triple-double got the King's crown, and within minutes the internet turned into a courtroom. Applause for Clark sounded like betrayal to Angel Reese, and the silence afterward felt louder than boos. Screenshots flew, subtweets sharpened, every glance became a message, every smile became a provocation. This wasn't about basketball anymore, it was about validation, about who gets seen when the brightest spotlight swings. Clark kept hooping. Calm and surgical, while the fever ran the sky off the floor. Reese kept battling, jaw tight, eyes blazing, rebounds piling up with misses she wanted back, and somewhere between a congratulatory caption and a 93-58 blowout, a rivalry spilled out of the locker room and onto timelines worldwide. Fans chose sides instantly. Memes crowned Clark. Comment sections demanded loyalty, analysts whispered about pressure, jealousy, and the cost of carrying a brand before carrying wins. In Chicago, cameras caught frustration that words couldn't hide. In Indiana, cheers felt like destiny. LeBron's praise wasn't a diss, but it landed like one. By night's end, one star floated above the chaos, another burned with something sharper than anger. And as the league tried to calm the noise, a single question refused to fade. When respect is given to one, does it steal oxygen from the other or ignite a fire that can't be controlled? The answer arrived faster than anyone expected. And it wasn't gentle either. For Angel Reese, this moment didn't come out of nowhere. It was built brick by brick, glare by glare, headline by headline. Long before the WNBA, she learned that attention is never neutral. At LSU, she became a symbol before she became a pro, celebrated by some, resented by others, dissected every time she smiled, taunted, or dared to say she belonged at the top. Confidence wasn't just her personality, it was armor. Because every time she stepped on the floor, she carried more than a stat line. She carried expectation, projection, and a narrative she didn't fully control. She was told she was polarizing, that she was too much, too loud, too visible, too unapologetic. But she also watched the cameras follow her, the brands line up, the fans chant her name. That contradiction shaped her. Praise felt conditional, respect felt fragile, and somewhere along the way, proving people wrong became as important as winning games. When she entered the league, she didn't come quietly. She arrived already branded, already debated, already under a microscope. Then there was Caitlin Clark. The comparison never asked permission. 2 stars, 2 styles, 2 energies, forced into the same conversation by fans and media hungry for contrast. Clark's rise felt effortless to outsiders. Deep threes, sold-out arenas, universal praise. Reese's path felt heavier, physical battles, rebounding wars, constant scrutiny. One was framed as the savior of the sport, the other, as the disruptor. And every time Reese heard Clark's name attached to growth, ratings, and legitimacy, something tightened in her chest. Not because she hated Clark, but because she wanted acknowledgement that her own impact mattered too. So when LeBron James spoke, it cut deeper than any box score. LeBron wasn't just another voice. He was the voice. The one whose respect signaled arrival. The one who understood pressure, scrutiny, and being crowned early. Reese believed he understood her struggle. She believed he saw her. And when his words lifted Clark without mentioning her, it didn't feel neutral. It felt like erasure. That's the part outsiders miss. This wasn't about jealousy alone. It was about history. About years of fighting to be taken seriously, only to watch the biggest megaphone in sports amplify someone else at the exact moment. Reese was already slipping under the weight of expectation, the missed layups, the tight shoulders, the forced smiles. They weren't random, they were symptoms. Because when your identity is built on being seen, being overlooked feels like betrayal. And Angel Reese was standing on that edge, long before LeBron ever typed a caption. What happened next wasn't impulsive, it was inevitable. The conflict exploded the moment Angel Reese stopped pretending everything was fine. Cameras caught it before words did. The clenched jaw, the delayed jog back on defense, the stare toward the bench that lingered a beat too long. On the scoreboard, the damage was already done. Indiana was running Chicago out of the building. Caitlin Clark orchestrating the chaos with surgical calm, while LeBron's praise hovered over the night like a spotlight that refused to move. Every miss by Reese felt amplified. Every rebound felt hollow. The game wasn't just slipping, a weight was indicting her in real time. Then the first twist hit, and it didn't come from the court. It came from the phone. A subtle post, a story that vanished almost as quickly as it appeared, an emoji-laced message that fans read as a shot across the bow. Angel didn't name LeBron, She didn't name Caitlyn. She didn't have to. The implication was loud enough to rattle Within minutes, analysts paused, mid-segment, scrolling feeds instead of box scores. Commentators started using words like fracture, misread, pressure cooker. The narrative flipped from rivalry to rupture. Inside the locker room, the tension curdled. Sources whispered about a sharp exchange, voices raised, a door shut too hard, a coach stepping in to cool the air. Teammates avoided eye contact. The room split into quiet corners. No one wanted to be the quote that went viral next. And that's when the second layer of the twist emerged. The team first mantra, once a shield, became a measuring stick aimed squarely at Angel. Effort was praised. Efficiency was demanded. The message was coded but clear: play through it, don't play at it. On the other side, Clark did what she always did. She smiled. She answered questions without bait. She thanked LeBron with disarming sincerity and went back to work. That contrast poured gasoline on everything. Fans didn't just choose sides, they entrenched. One camp framed Angel as disrespected, carrying burdens no one else had to bear. The other framed her as unraveling, mistaking noise for impact. The debate swallowed nuance whole. Then came the stat graphic that broke the spell. A chyron flashed percentages that didn't flatter, layups missed, paint touches wasted, rebounds inflated by second chances she had to create because the first look didn't fall. It wasn't a hit piece, it was arithmetic. And in a league trying to sell credibility, arithmetic travels fast. Suddenly, the question wasn't why LeBron praised Clark. It was why. Angel's production hadn't caught up to her platform. The shocking twist landed late that night, whispered at first, then echoed. A coach's quote, clipped and clean, about roles, about focus, about letting the game speak. It wasn't a benching, it wasn't a fine, it was worse. It was distance, the kind that tells a star she's no longer insulated, that the room will not bend to protect the brand, that the court is the only argument that counts. By morning, the headlines had hardened. Reese versus the world, Reese versus the system, Reese versus herself. And hovering above it all was LeBron's original post, still up, still glowing, still untouched, now recast as the spark that lit a fuse no one admitted was already burning. Angel Reese hadn't just clapped back. She'd stepped into a storm where every move would be judged twice, once by fans, once by the people who share her jersey. The first battle lines were drawn, the second was already forming, and the league was about to find out what happens when a star feels cornered, while another keeps winning in silence. The escalation didn't arrive quietly, it detonated. Overnight, the whispers turned into briefings, the briefings into segments, and the segments into a 24-hour loop where Angel Reese's name became shorthand for volatility. Every show wanted a piece of her reaction, every panel needed a take, and none of them agreed on the verdict. Some called it righteous anger, others called it misdirected rage. But inside the league offices, the tone shifted from debate to concern, because when narratives harden, they stop being storylines and start becoming problems. Practice the next morning felt different, not louder, quieter, the kind of quiet that presses on your ears. A coach stopped a drill early, pulled the group together, and talked about controllables, about staying present, about letting outside noise die at the door. No names were said, everyone knew who it was for. Angel nodded, jaw tight, eyes fixed somewhere beyond the far baseline. Teammates exchanged looks that said everything and nothing. This wasn't a blow-up, it was a recalibration. And recalibrations are where stars either sharpen or shatter. The second major twist came from an unexpected place. The numbers meeting the narrative head-on. A league-produced, graphically neutral, unavoidable, circulated internally before it hit air. Efficiency trends, on-ball impact, lineup net ratings. It didn't accuse, it didn't editorialize. It simply contrasted, and in that contrast, the gulf widened. Clark's on-court gravity bent defenses and lifted lineups. Reese's energy lifted possessions, but didn't consistently lift. Reese's energy lifted possessions, but didn't consistently lift outcomes. The difference wasn't effort, it was conversion. And when that graphic went public, the debate stopped being emotional and started being forensic. Social media, predictably, lost its mind. Clips were stitched with captions that screamed betrayal. Fans dissected body language like crime scene footage. A single glance toward the bench became a theory. A missed bunny became a referendum. Influencers picked sides because outrage pays better than patience. Angel's supporters rallied, framing the moment as another chapter in a familiar struggle, burdened expectations, uneven grace. Detractors sharpened knives, insisting that accountability isn't cruelty. The middle ground vanished. Then came the locker room leak, not a quote, not a fight, but a detail. A source hinted that a leadership council had met, that roles were discussed, that minutes were earned, not promised. Again, no names. Again, everyone understood. The message wasn't punitive, it was procedural. And procedure, in a star economy, feels like exile. Angel responded the only way she could by pressing harder, attacking the rim, chasing boards, playing like the floor was on fire. The effort surged. The finish didn't always follow. Across the court, Clark kept refusing the bait. She answered LeBron questions with gratitude and moved on. She didn't gloat. She didn't posture. She let assists accumulate like interest. That restraint became its own provocation. Fans read maturity into it. Sponsors read safety. The league read stability. And stability, when contrasted with turbulence, becomes a magnet. The escalation peaked when a post-game soundbite landed wrong. Angel spoke about respect and recognition, about who people choose to uplift. It was measured. It was human. It was instantly headlines trimmed nuance. Kyron's added heat. The room where she spoke felt smaller by the second as the words escaped her control and took on lives of their own. Behind closed doors, conversations turned practical. Media training, focus plans, guardrails, not discipline management, the kind that signals belief with boundaries. Angel listened. She nodded. She promised to keep it about basketball, but basketball had already been dragged into something bigger. Proxy war over visibility, validation, and who gets crowned without asking. The second twist locked in late that night when a league insider floated a possibility that no one wanted to say out loud. All-star optics, voting narratives, selections that reflect both performance and peace. It wasn't a threat, it was a forecast. And forecasts change behavior. As dawn broke, the story wasn't about LeBron anymore, or even Caitlyn. It was about Angel at a crossroads: double down on defiance or recalibrate into efficiency. One path fed the fire. The other demanded humility under lights that rarely forgive it. The next game loomed, and with it, a decision that would echo far beyond a box score. Because the league had started watching differently, and once that happens, there's no going back. The fallout hit before the final buzzer could even cool. It rolled across timelines, studios, and group chats with the force of something personal. Because for many people, it was. Fans didn't just argue, they chose sides like it was an election. Clips were slowed down, zoomed in, replayed with captions that implied intent where there was only exhaustion. Every miss became evidence. Every made play was framed as defiance. The discourse wasn't about basketball anymore. It was about who gets believed when pressure cracks the surface. Inside arenas, the temperature shifted, cheers came sharper, boos more deliberate. Angel could feel it the moment she checked in, an edge in the air that wasn't there weeks ago. Each trip to the line carried a murmur that rose or fell depending on who held the ball. Teammates tried to insulate her, slapping hands, calling sets louder than usual, but the noise seeped through. This was no longer a slump. It was a referendum unfolding in real time. Media rooms turned surgical. Questions were framed as concern, but the subtext cut. How are you handling expectations? Do endorsements add pressure? Do you feel overshadowed? Angel answered with poise she'd learned the hard way, but the answers were sliced into clips and fed back to the crowd as something else entirely. Meanwhile, Clark's availability became a masterclass in She redirected praise, deflected comparisons, praised teammates. The contrast hardened into a narrative that fed itself. Sponsors noticed, not with ultimatums, but with tone. Requests for appearances shifted. Messaging drafts arrived with more caveats. Nothing was pulled yet, but everyone could read between the lines. Brands don't chase storms, they wait for skies to clear. The league noticed too. Executives spoke publicly about growth, and privately about balance. The word protect surfaced in memos: protect players, protect the product, protect the moment. Protection, in this context, meant steering the spotlight toward steadiness. Online, the backlash split into factions. One side rallied behind Angel with fierce loyalty, reframing every critique as coded disrespect, every stat as selectively weaponized. The other side leaned into efficiency charts and on-off numbers, arguing that accountability isn't hatred. Both sides shouted past each other, and in the crossfire, nuance was flattened. Former players chimed in with cautionary tales. Legends preached patience. Influencers fanned flames because heat drives clicks. In the locker room, the emotional cost surfaced quietly. A missed rotation drew a sigh. A forced shot earned a glance. Not hostility, the kind that comes when attention outweighs execution, and everyone feels it. A veteran pulled Angel aside, spoke softly about pacing the season. about letting the game come back to her. Angel listened, eyes glossy, jaw set. She wasn't rejecting advice. She was wrestling with identity who she'd been told she was versus who the court demanded she become. The public reaction peaked on a night when the scoreline didn't flatter anyone, the team lost, the margins were ugly, and the cameras lingered. Angel walked off without stopping, face unreadable. Within minutes, think pieces dropped. Some called it growth, others called it avoidance. The truth lived somewhere in between, buried under expectation. And then came the rumor unconfirmed, carefully worded, impossible to ignore. Whispers of all-star optics, of conversations about selections that cool narratives rather than inflame them. No accusations, no denials, just the suggestion that momentum had consequences beyond wins and losses. Fans pounced, conspiracies bloomed, trust thinned. Angel returned home that night to silence. No posts, no stories, just a phone buzzing with messages she didn't open. Across the league, Clark prepared for the next game like nothing had changed. That steadiness became the loudest statement of all. Because the fallout wasn't just public, it was emotional, institutional, and unfinished. And with voting windows opening and cameras circling, the next move wouldn't just shape a season, it would decide who the league chooses to elevate. When the noise gets loud, the twist didn't come from a microphone or a tweet. It came from silence and from who broke it first. Late one night, after hours of speculation churned itself into exhaustion, a single notification cut through the noise. Not a statement, not an apology, just a reposed. A clip from months earlier, buried in an old interview, where Angel had talked about pressure, about being misunderstood, about knowing the cost of choosing the hard road. No caption, no nothing to frame it. The ambiguity detonated. Was it defiance? Was it vulnerability? Was it a warning? By morning, insiders were whispering about closed-door conversations, not arguments, the kind that happen when a league realizes moments can slip out of control if they're not managed. Scheduling tweaks, media availability adjustments, subtle shifts that don't read like punishment but feel like redirection. Angel noticed. So did her teammates. It wasn't hostile, it was careful, and careful can feel colder than confrontation. Then came the second shoe. A report again, not official, about all-star logistics tightening, less tolerance for volatility, a renewed emphasis on representation and tone. The language was clean, the implication was not. Fans split again, this time over principle. Is it fair to ask stars to be quieter? Is calm a prerequisite for greatness? Or is greatness supposed to bend the room, not accommodate it? Angel practiced through it all with a focus that surprised even her critics. Less talk, fewer gestures, more patience in the paint. It showed briefly. A stretch of efficient possessions, a defensive stand that drew applause without irony. For a moment, it looked like the storm might pass. And then the cameras found her again. A post-game exchange short, clipped, was enough to reignite everything. One sentence, parsed 6 ways. Analysts argued whether it was growth or restraint. Fans argued whether restraint was authenticity or surrender. Meanwhile, Clark kept stacking performances that made the debate feel academic. No need to comment. No need to clap back. The scoreboard spoke fluently. Behind the scenes, sponsors watched the numbers. Engagement spiked around Angel whenever controversy flared, then dipped when the game quieted. With Clark, it stayed steady. Predictable. Brands love predictable. The math was unforgiving. The final twist arrived, disguised as praise. A league executive, speaking broadly about the season's success, credited players who let the game lead. It wasn't aimed at anyone until it was. Clips circulated. Names trended. Angel didn't respond. She didn't need to. The message was clear enough. But here's what no one expected. A late-night workout video surfaced. Grainy, no branding, just Angel in an empty gym. Reps piling up. Footwork deliberate. Finishes clean. No soundtrack. No slogans. The comments flooded in any way. Some cheered the reset. Others mocked it as damage control. Angel still said nothing. The next game loomed. The kind that decides narratives before the ball even tips. Win, and the story bends. Lose, and it hardens. Tickets sold fast, not because of drama, but because everyone wanted to see which version would show up, and hovering over it all was the unasked question. What happens if Angel chooses a different lane entirely? Less spectacle, more substance, not quieter. What happens if the league realizes too late that tension, not tranquility, built its moment? As warm-ups ended and the lights dimmed, Angel stood at midcourt, eyes locked, jaw set. Across the way, Clark adjusted her ponytail. Calm as ever. 2 paths. 1 spotlight. Only one of them would define what the WNBA rewards when pressure turns public, and the choice was about to be made. By the time the game tipped, the fallout had already outrun the ball. Every possession felt loaded with meaning that had nothing to do with the scoreboard. When Angel touched the ball, the crowd didn't just react, they judged. Gasps came faster than cheers. Misses were magnified. Makes were greeted with a relief that sounded almost suspicious, like people wanted proof they could still believe. The broadcast leaned in, cameras hunting for expressions, for reactions, for anything that could be turned into a symbol. This wasn't just a game, it was a live trial. Angel played like someone carrying weight she couldn't put down. She fought on the glass, absorbed contact, kicked the ball out instead of forcing it. It was cleaner, smarter, but the noise didn't care. Social media clipped a single glare after a whistle and ignored 3 defensive stops that never make highlight reels. By halftime, the timeline had already decided what the story was no matter what the second half delivered. Across the league, players were watching. Some texted support privately. Others stayed quiet, not out of indifference, but calculation. In a moment like this, even solidarity becomes politicized. Say the wrong thing and you're dragged into a war you didn't start. Say nothing and you're accused of cowardice. So many chose silence, and that silence spoke louder than any statement. The post-game press conference was a pressure cooker. Angel answered carefully, but care itself was treated like guilt. Analysts debated her tone for hours afterward. Was she guarded? Was she defensive? Was she finally learning? Nobody asked whether the questions were fair in the first place. Meanwhile, Clark's night was framed as effortless dominance. Her quotes clipped with reverence. 2 players, 2 lenses, same league. The emotional toll showed up where cameras rarely look. In the locker room, conversations stalled. Music played too loud. Someone laughed at the wrong moment. Angel sat longer than usual, staring at her shoes, scrolling past messages she wasn't ready to read. A teammate tried to lighten the mood. It didn't land. This wasn't about chemistry breaking, it was about pressure seeping into everything. Fans took the argument offline. Call-in shows crackled with anger. Comment sections turned cruel. Supporters rallied fundraisers and hashtags, trying to counterbalance what they saw as a pylon. Critics doubled down with charts and comparisons, insisting this was meritocracy, not malice. Both sides claimed love for the game. The game itself got lost. Then the league stepped in softly, a carefully timed statement about respect, about growth, about the responsibility of platforms. No names, no blame, just enough to signal awareness, just enough to calm advertisers, just enough to make Angel wonder who it was really for. Late that night, a new rumor surfaced. Again, unconfirmed. Whispers about all-star considerations, shifting, about alternates and optics, and avoiding distractions. The word distraction stuck like a splinter. Angel had been called many things before. Distraction cut deeper. She didn't respond publicly. She trained early mornings, late nights, fewer cameras, more work. It was the oldest answer in sports, and the hardest to trust when narratives have already calcified. Improvement doesn't trend as fast as controversy. As the next matchup approached, the league felt tighter, like everyone was holding their breath. Clark prepared with the same quiet routine. Angel taped her wrists, pulled her jersey over her head, and walked out with a look that said nothing and everything at once. Because the fallout wasn't done spreading. It had reached the league's core question: what kind of star does it want to reward? The unflappable one who glides through praise, or the combustible one who forces the conversation forward, even when it burns? The answer wouldn't come from a statement or a vote. It would come from what happens when the lights come on again. Whether Angel is allowed to rewrite the story before it writes her out. The final twist arrived quietly, disguised as routine. The league released its All-Star update on an otherwise slow afternoon, buried beneath injury notes and scheduling reminders. No press conference, no dramatic reveal, just names, numbers, and footnotes. Fans scanned the list in seconds and then froze. Angel's name sat lower than anyone expected, not absent, not erased, but positioned in a way that felt deliberate, a compromise, close enough to avoid outrage, far enough to send a message. The reaction was instant and vicious. Supporters called it a setup. Critics called it inevitable. Former players debated whether it was a snub or a safeguard. The word politics trended alongside basketball, and nobody could agree where one ended and the other began. Angel didn't post, didn't like, didn't repost. Silence again, this time, sharper. Inside the building, The mood shifted from tense to brittle. Teammates tried to be normal, but normal felt fake. A coach emphasized focus, then paused, choosing words carefully. Angel nodded, eyes forward, absorbing everything without giving anything back. That restraint was new. It scared some people more than the outbursts ever did. Across the country, Clark prepared for the All-Star weekend with the same steady rhythm. No commentary, no comparisons. She was asked about leadership and talked about teammates, asked about attention and talked about preparation. The contrast hardened into something uncomfortable, not because either approach was wrong, but because the league seemed to reward only one. Then came the leak. A short clip, shot from the stands, surfaced online late at night. Angel, after a tough whistle, jaw clenched, saying something no one could quite hear. Lip readers guessed. Captions filled in blanks with accusations. The clip ran everywhere. Context vanished. The next morning, pundits debated whether this was proof of immaturity or evidence of someone pushed past the edge. Angel woke up to see herself trending again, this time for a sentence she didn't remember saying. That was when she finally moved, not online, not to the media. She called a meeting private, off the record. Just players. No cameras. No executives. What was said didn't leak. What did leak was the effect. Teammates left quieter, more serious, unified in a way that hadn't been visible before. For the first time in weeks, the noise stayed outside the room. The next game reflected it. Angel played within herself and beyond the box score. Screens set, passes made early, a block that swung momentum. No celebrations, no gestures, just work. The crowd noticed. The broadcast struggled to frame it. This didn't fit the arc they'd been building. Afterward, an analyst asked the question everyone had been circling. Do you feel misunderstood? Angel paused longer than usual. Then she said, I feel motivated. Nothing more. Then she said, I feel motivated. Nothing more. Behind the scenes, league officials weighed options, adjustments, messaging, balance. The season had become a referendum on values, and there was no neutral choice anymore. Whatever they did next would be read as endorsement or erasure. Late that night, Angel posted once, no words, just a photo. Empty gym, lights half on, a ball resting on the baseline, location tag turned off. The comments exploded. Support, mockery, predictions, warnings. But buried among them was a single question repeated thousands of times. What happens if she stops playing the role they wrote for her, and forces the league to respond to something it can't control? The answer wasn't coming from a vote or a statement, it was coming from the next moment. She decided to take the floor and whether the league would let the game, finally, speak louder than the narrative, and that moment was closer than anyone realized. This is where you come in, because this story isn't finished. And it isn't just about Angel Reese, Caitlin Clark, or one all-star list. It's about who controls the narrative, who gets grace, who gets judged, and who decides what greatness is supposed to look like. In the WNBA, you've seen the clips, you've read the headlines, you've felt the tension. Every time these two names are put in the same sentence, now ask yourself honestly, is Angel Reese being held to a different standard? Or is this just the cost of demanding the spotlight? Is Caitlin Clark being protected, or simply rewarded for letting her game do the talking? And when the league markets one image but the fans vote another, who actually has the power? Drop your thoughts in the comments. No dodging, no fence-sitting. Is this a snub, a warning, or the beginning of a full reset for Angel Reese? And if you're the league, what do you do next? Double down, or step back and let the court decide? If you want real breakdowns, not PR spin. If you want context, not clickbait. If you want to follow this story as it unfolds in real time, hit like, subscribe, and turn on notifications, because the next game, the next quote, the next vote could change everything. And when it does, we'll be right here.